Hi, Quilter here, East Slope Wood Turning. Today I've got a new project that's going to be a hit with the quilters and the people that do a lot of small patchwork sewing. It's called a seam roller. Apparently, when they're putting their pieces of material together and they sew a seam, they like to be able to press the seams flat, which means they have to get up and go to an ironing board and iron their seams. And this little tool is an aid so that they can do it right at their table, very simply, flatten the seams, and perhaps they can do several seams at one time so that when they do have to go to an ironing board, they have lots of things to iron. So with this little video is going to show how I came up with making these. This particular one, this design has been an evolution. I've made some out of recycled HDPE. I've tried a few different handle designs. I had some quilters actually do some beta testing, and they gave me the hints that the handles were too big or too long or too short. And I've come up with this design. It's about 6 or 8 inches long overall. It has a wheel. It's all wood. There's no metal parts in it. And yeah, so we're gonna make a few of these today. I'm not going to show the turning of the wheel. That's pretty straightforward. It's just about a 2-inch block. Put a recess on either side so you can turn it back and forth. One of the key important features of this particular tool is the corners here have to be rounded. They can't be square or sharp because apparently that will bruise the fabric or make a mark on the fabric. And this has to be radius with the slightest hint of a high spot or a point, and that's probably where they would run this roller right down the middle of their seam. So that's the feedback from the quilters that have expressed what they need in their tool. So that's what we built. So I won't be showing us turning this. What I will do though is show how I made the handles. I make the handles start off with a block of wood about 1 inch square, and I glue on 2 struts, which will end up being the side pieces that hold the wheel. And after the glue is set, this wheel will fit in. I'll have to mark off and drill the axle hole. And I make my own axles out of a piece of, I usually use oak because it's a nice hard wood, takes wax well. I'll be turning one of these in this demonstration as well. I put a little end on it to just a little end cap, and I try and decorate the little end cap a little bit. When I turn this piece, I turn this so that I can get a nice profile on the handle. This prototype that I made, I didn't turn it. I did it on the sand. I turned this piece, but then I sanded these parts here, trying to understand how to get the profile nicely shaped. This particular one, I turned on the lathe. And in order to turn it on the lathe, I had to be a little bit creative. To try and turn this piece with, I don't have a spindle that would fit in here to turn it on. So what I ended up doing was taking a piece of double stick tape, putting it on the base, making this little block, and now I can put the block in on the headstock and hold it with the tailstock, and I can turn it like this, which allows me to turn a nice little profile and finish the handle. So I'll show how that's been done too. Alrighty, we'll reset the cameras and we'll come back when we're ready to do some turning. Okay, we're back. So as I indicated earlier, I started out with gluing up these blanks, and I cut a piece of wood that is just exactly the same length. This is the piece of wood I used when I was gluing up as an indicator for how long to set the spurs on there. So to set these up to get ready for turning, I just take a piece of double-sided tape. I use Turner's tape, not the carpet tape. This is actual Turner's tape. It's a little more expensive than the regular double-sided tape, but I find that it works really, really well. In that it's pressure sensitive, so it once you put it on there, it sticks really good. So again, I lay this down on something flat. So that I can get it as centered as possible. Oops, looks like that might be a little bit too tight, so I'll set it down this way. And when I set this up in on the lathe, it's putting a little pressure on there actually helps set the tape up. I have never had one of these come loose on me yet, and because I put a piece of double stick tape in here, I'm hoping that with the pressure this way and the side pieces on here will keep this block from flipping out, and light cuts, and hopefully we won't have any mishaps, but anything's possible. I've turned some of these already and had no problem, but anything can happen, so we'll just keep an eye on that, and always wear a face shield. That way if pieces do come apart, they'll hopefully they won't do any damage. So we'll start off slow, bring the speed up, stand out of the line of fire, bring the speed up. Do a marking on the end of the handle. Take a quick look and see how the profile's going. So there, that's got a real nice smooth transition from the legs that are going to hold the wheel. Nice smooth transition into the handle. I think I'll shape this handle a little thinner here and maybe put some burn lines on and go from there. Turning it on the lathe allows me to get a nice little radius edge on here. It's a lot more consistent than doing it on a sander, but looks like this little setup's going to work. There, that looks pretty good. I like the way this is. I'll be touching this part up on the sander, on the belt sander afterwards, just smooth that off, but I think that's looking pretty good. I'm going to continue to take this down a little bit here, and won't part it off completely on here because I don't want this to fly apart, but I'll take this down so that I can cut it off with the handsaw later. There we go. So I can just take my handsaw and we'll just whip this off, and I can stand it up a little bit later and make some nice little end on it. So the prototype works. Now I'll just take this piece of block of wood and I can put it in the next one that I'm ready to do. Chuck it up, hold this up so that it's nicely lined up. I guess I should mark the center on this one. Need to put a dimple on the end of this so it keeps it centered. I bought this little centering jig from Lee Valley Tools. It's been very handy, simple to use. Gives you a nice little square end on there. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it gives you a nice perfectly centered square to put a center punch on. I like this little spring-loaded center punch. It doesn't. It still takes 2 hands to do it, but you don't have to swing a hammer. You set the point on the cross, and you don't need to pull it very hard, but it gives you a nice little dimple. Makes it really, really easy to center a block of wood, nice and quick and easy. And what the heck, it's just another tool junky thing. And it's spring-loaded, so it's kind of flexible. And I like to check the clearance on this end here to tell me how close to center I am. And by getting these corners really, really close to the tool rest, I can tell whether I have this little block put in here centered so that when I turn it, I'll be able to take these corners off nice and evenly all the way around. Makes it easier to make the nice little transition into the handle. When I make these, I end up making a batch of these handles. I'll turn up, maybe I'll glue up 10 or a dozen handles with the legs on them and let them dry overnight, or even for a couple of days. And I always make them the same size so I can use the same block. And this looks like it's going to be a good process. Okay, so I've managed to drill the handles out, and there's about 1/8 of an inch clearance with the hole lined up in there so the wheels will spin freely. And now we're going to go ahead and make some axles. And I start making the axles out of a piece of oak. This one here is about I don't know, 5/8 of an inch square. Just happened to be a piece that I have laying around. I'll chuck it up in my #1 jaws here. Primary reason is to get a tenon on here. The pin needs to be long enough to go through. The axle has to be long enough to go through so it protrudes on both sides of the handles, and then I can cut them off if I need to be. So I'll just put a little bit of a mark on here so I know about how long to make the axle. So this section here is going to be turned down to 3/8 of an inch, and then the very end is going to stay 3/8 of an inch, and underneath the cap is going to be 3/8 of an inch. But the center area here where the wheel's going to actually ride is going to be slightly smaller than 3/8. So once I have these fitted, then I will come back and I'll either sand it or maybe do a really, really light scrape on that to make sure the center is relieved enough so that there's clearance for the wheel to spin freely. So it allows you to glue the axle into the handles, and yet the wheel can still spin freely. So this is a tenon cutter. It's a 3/8 inch wrench. I just mounted it in a handle. I've sharpened the top section so that when I get this close to size, I can lay this on the tool rest and push it in, and it'll give me a 3/8. And I found that this 3/8 wrench fits very nicely in the 3/8 hole drilled by my 3/8 bit. So they're So that should be 3/8 of an inch. And you can see that it fits in there nice and snug, and that's what we like. We like to have it in there nice and snug. Now I'm going to relieve a little bit in the center so that this can push on, and the pins will then be size on the holes, but the center will be relieved where the wheel's going to run. So we don't want the wheel to be tight. It's a 3/8 hole in the wheel as well, and we don't want that to be tight, so I'll put a pencil mark on here. Leave a little bit in between there. Take a little bit more off the end. That's just a little bit tighter than I like it to have, because we are going to glue these in, so they just need to have a nice slip fit. So that wheel will fit on there nice and spin. It will spin really nice, and yet the ends of the shaft are sized for the hole. There, that's perfect. So the real nice fit in the handles. And yet the wheel will spin freely. So these are glue in real nice, and the wheel will spin freely, and it's pretty well centered, so that looks great. So now that I've got this, I just need to turn around and put a fancy little cap on it. I like to make it look a little bit custom. And there we have it, one new axle. So the axle will fit in here nice and snug and through the handle, and it will fit through the wheel. Kind of a push fit through the wheel. But once the pin's all the way in, the wheel spins freely. It's not too much looseness, but it needs to be able to spin freely, and then if the wood decides to move a little bit, it needs to have enough clearance so that it can work. And there you go, that's a finished product. These should be a real hit at the sewing club. I just need to sand it up a little bit. I'm going to finish it with the Osmo top oil, either the satin or just the natural finish. And this one here happens to be in maple. I have some that I've made out of oak, and some I've made out of an assembly of maple and oak. So I'm sure the ladies will appreciate it. Thanks for watching.